Following the emotional high of the 2025 Royal Rumble, Jey Uso found himself positioned as one of the most organically beloved babyfaces in all of WWE. His Rumble performance showcased not only his resilience and heart, but also reaffirmed the fan investment that had been building since his first confrontation with Roman Reigns during the early days of the Bloodline storyline. But instead of capitalizing on the groundswell of momentum he had coming out of that moment, WWE slowly, then quickly, dismantled every bit of momentum he had, both creatively and in terms of presentation. The immediate weeks following the Rumble were telling. Rather than immediately giving Jey a tangible direction, whether it be a singles feud that mattered, a marquee match at WrestleMania, or even an emotional continuation of his Bloodline narrative, he was instead placed into ambiguous scenarios where his involvement felt more obligatory than essential. While other major stars, including CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, and even The Rock, had clearly defined stakes in the WrestleMania build, Jey's character floated aimlessly, often dropped into multi-man tag matches or backstage segments that did little more than remind the audience he was still around. His promos, once emotionally gripping and steeped in family betrayal and identity crisis, became hollow catchphrase vehicles, designed for crowd pops but devoid of deeper substance. The most glaring example of WWE's mismanagement came in the WrestleMania 41 build-up, where Jey was ultimately paired with Jey Uso in a match that should have had years' worth of storytelling weight, but was reduced to a shallow sibling rivalry that lacked the emotional stakes fans had invested in. The long-awaited clash between the twins should have been a deeply personal, layered narrative driven by betrayal, loyalty, and a fight for individual identity. Instead, WWE relied on surface-level storytelling and outdated tropes, choosing to ignore the complexity of their shared journey through the Bloodline saga. The feud was rushed, poorly written, and lacking the dramatic depth that had made the early Bloodline segments so riveting. Even their WrestleMania match was relegated to a mid-card slot, sandwiched between filler segments, giving it the energy of a cool-down bout rather than a culmination of a saga that had carried WWE's top programming for over 2 years. Adding to the problem was how WWE began to treat Jey in terms of booking logic. The once resourceful and emotionally rich character was now constantly depicted as naive, reactive, and overly sentimental in ways that made him seem disconnected from the cunning performer we had seen during his Bloodline rebellion. Instead of channeling the emotional fire that made him a compelling underdog, WWE leaned into a corny, overacted portrayal of main event Jey Uso that veered dangerously close to parody. Even the yeet catchphrase, which had caught on organically, was transformed into a corporate branding tool and then inexplicably dropped from TV entirely after reported internal trademark issues. Further proof that WWE failed to understand or value the authenticity of what made Jey's rise special in the first place. The post-WrestleMania Raw only further emphasized how WWE no longer viewed Jey as a priority. With CM Punk injured, Cody Rhodes now champion, and new feuds bubbling across Raw, Jey was again left directionless. No follow-up on his WrestleMania loss to Jimmy. No new feud. No hint of redemption or a long arc in place. He was inserted into a tag match, a lazy booking choice that not only minimized his individuality, but made him feel like a throw-in to kill time on the show. Worse, fans who had once chanted his name with full voice were now quieter, unsure what WWE wanted them to care about when it came to Jey. That palpable silence was perhaps the clearest indictment of all, because the crowd had once been with him. They had traveled through his heartbreak, his loyalty, his anger, his defiance. Now, they weren't sure who he was supposed to be. There was a brief glimmer of potential during the April Raw in Philadelphia, where Jey had a face-off with Sami Zayn backstage. This could have reignited a beautifully complex dynamic given their shared history, but WWE once again opted for a throwaway interaction without weight or consequence. The promo segment hinted at depth, but the follow-up never arrived. WWE never gave it space to breathe. The story threads were there: trust, betrayal, brotherhood, sacrifice, but the company refused to tug at them, content to leave compelling drama untapped. Even more troubling was how other superstars began leapfrogging Jey in terms of presentation and priority. LA Knight, who hadn't been involved in the Bloodline saga at all, was positioned as a bigger star. Braun Breaker's Raw debut was handled with more urgency. Even Logan Paul, a part-time performer, was granted far more screen time and clearer stakes than Jey Uso, despite Jey being a foundational pillar in one of the greatest long-term WWE storylines in modern history. The message was clear: Jey's moment had passed, and WWE was now more focused on creating new momentum than honoring the one they already had. The company's failure to build on the emotional core of Jey's arc also speaks to a broader issue in WWE's storytelling as of late: the refusal to reward long-term investment unless it aligns with the company's pre-scripted peaks. Jey Uso's narrative didn't wrap up in a convenient 3-month cycle. It simmered, ebbed, and exploded over years, to then reduce him to a simplified version of himself, stripped of his anguish, depth, and urgency, felt like a betrayal not just to Jey, but to the audience who had cried with him, cheered for him, and seen themselves in his struggle for self-definition. This mismanagement also extended to how commentary presented Jey. During matches, Michael Cole and Corey Graves shifted from praising his growth and resilience to offering generic platitudes about energy and vibe. There was no nuance, no reference to his transformation from bloodline foot soldier to solo star. When commentary flattens a character, it signals a lack of creative intent. Jey was no longer being narrated as a crucial piece of WWE's emotional puzzle. He had become a background act. And then came the April episode of SmackDown, where Jey Uso cut a promo justifying his actions at WrestleMania, laying the blame on Jey for abandoning the family. This promo was an opportunity to reignite the fire of their conflict, to deepen the rift and present a real ideological split. But Jey wasn't even there. No rebuttal, no pre-recorded message, just silence. The feud was dead on arrival, not because the performers lacked ability, but because WWE's creative engine had already moved on. Jey was written out of his own story. It's a pattern that has plagued WWE for years. Momentum built organically is often squandered when it doesn't fit the company's rigid calendar. Jey's fall from relevance post-Royal Rumble is not just a failure to elevate a rising star, it's indicative of WWE's chronic inability to trust the audience's emotional intelligence. Fans wanted to see Jey not only confront his brother, but challenge the very system that manipulated them. They wanted him to rise above tribalism, above toxic family loyalty, and into a role where he could be a voice for others still shackled. Instead, WWE gave us a caricature, loud, aimless, and unfulfilled. The worst part is that Jey hasn't lost the crowd entirely yet. The connection is dormant, not dead, but each week that WWE ignores him, that connection fades. Each meaningless match, each promo with no emotional through line, chips away at what made main event Jey Uso matter. He had heart, he had scars, he had a cause. Now he has nothing but a microphone and a tagline. And even the tagline was taken from him. Jey Uso deserved better, because the story of Jey Uso was never about titles or even the bloodline at its surface. It was about identity. It was about a man pulled between duty and desire, between family and freedom. And when he finally chose freedom, when he stepped away from Roman Reigns, when he stood alone in the Royal Rumble and made us believe in him as a solo act, WWE had the opportunity to give us a fully realized character. They chose not to. They chose complacency. They chose safe, shallow beats over rich, challenging storytelling. Now, Jey stands as a symbol of missed potential. He's still athletic, he's still charismatic, but he's trapped in a version of himself that feels like a shell, a walking echo of better days. And as others soar around him, Cody with the belt, Punk with the drama, Reigns with the mystique, Jey is a reminder of how even the most emotionally resonant character can be lost to poor creative choices. He was the soul of the Bloodline story, and now he's barely a footnote. When Jey cried on television, it felt real. Not acted, not scripted for dramatic effect, but authentic emotion, rooted in a story about a man torn between his blood and his conscience. WWE had a rare thing in Jey, a character who resonated not just with casual fans, but with those who crave substance in wrestling. He wasn't chasing a title for glory. He wasn't cutting edgy promos for shock value. He was fighting for his soul, for his individuality, and for the courage to walk away from a dynasty that had manipulated him. That kind of arc, built slowly over years, is golden. Most performers never even get one moment that defines them the way Jey's I Quit match with Roman did. And yet here we are, years removed from that night, with a WWE that has completely failed to follow through on what they themselves started. Jey Uso deserves more, because his growth has never been artificial. From tag team excellence with Jimmy, to finding his footing in singles competition, to becoming a symbol of resistance within the bloodline, everything he's done has been earned. He didn't skip steps. He didn't benefit from the usual shortcuts given to chosen ones. He fought in the trenches, played the long game, and connected with fans in a way that transcended his family name. And that's key, because while the bloodline story brought him into the spotlight, Jey Uso made himself stand out through the force of his own character. Roman was the champion. Jimmy was the brother. Paul Heyman was the manipulator. But Jey was the heart, the conscience, the one who made the pain feel personal and the stakes feel human. That kind of character doesn't come around often. Wrestling has plenty of great athletes, great speakers, and even great storytellers. But it rarely sees someone combine all three and do so with such effortless sincerity.